Hello and welcome, dear viewers, to our weekly episode of Business Insider, where together we'll scan the latest here in Egypt, the region and across the globe. And tonight we'll be talking about the inauguration of the 2024 harvest season at the Future of Egypt Project for Sustainable Development. The project that was inaugurated by His Excellency the President this week. This project is the agricultural project is the first under the broader New Delta project and covers over 1 million faddans. Tonight we have the great pleasure of having with us here in the studio Dr. Abdel Badr. He is a professor of plant genetics and biodiversity at Helwan University. He's also the chairman of the Environmental Research Council at ASRT, that's the Academy of Science and Research Technology. Very good evening to you, Dr. Badr. Always a pleasure to have you with us. Long time no see.
And thank you for having me on your program.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badr, for being with us. It's a great pleasure. So, how did you see this week's event, Dr. Badr?
I see it as a very important step forward during achieving our food security. It is a major step towards this objective because, as we know, we plan to have an increase of about 25% in our agricultural land in 10 years. And with this, we achieve about 25% of our objectives. When the delta itself, the new delta, is about 2.5 million, in addition to other places that will make up about 4. In addition to the 6 we already have for many years, so we will be about 9 to 10 million faddans by 2030, which is very promising. Of course, our population is growing, but at least this will contribute to a larger extent, to a major extent, to our food security.
Very good. Dr. Badr, dear viewers, allow us to watch a report about our main topic for tonight and then come back and continue our program.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inaugurated the first phase of the industrial zone and the 2024 harvest season of Egypt's Future Agriculture Project for Sustainable Development in the New Delta. The President inspected the site and listened to the details of the project from the Executive Director of Egypt's Future Agency for Sustainable Development, Baha El-Ghanam. El-Ghanam briefed the President on the shape of the silos storing different kinds of grains, whether wheat, rice, corn or soybeans. President Sisi also inaugurated a grain silo complex as part of Egypt's Future for Sustainable Development in a Daba corridor. In this respect, the President also inspected the storage silos, where he listened to an explanation of the storage stages, which begin with the unloading of the crop, whether corn or wheat, followed by the drying stage, then the cooling stage. The head of state also witnessed by video conference the opening of the harvest season of several agricultural sectors as part of the Future of Egypt Agriculture Project for Sustainable Development that is located along the new axis of Road al-Farag at Daba Road. The ceremony witnessed the attendance of Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, Defense Minister Mohammed Zaki, and a number of ministers and senior state officials. The Future of Egypt is considered the first venture under the broader New Delta project to achieve self-sufficiency and export agricultural surplus. The project is also meant to reduce the bill of imports through securing hard currency and achieving sustainable development goals.
Welcome back, and thank you as always, Rasha Abdul Hamid and Abir Hussein for this report. We're back here with Dr. Abdel Fattah Badr. Professor Badr, the project implemented by the Future of Egypt for Sustainable Development Authority has already reclaimed 800,000 faddans across Egypt and provided 2.5 million jobs. A part of the importance of such projects, I guess, is the creation of jobs and getting unemployment down.
Yes, it's a very important objective of the project. In addition to food production, it also is a major employment sector that would make, a job meaning that you sustain the life of families. 2 million are very important.
Indeed. Dr. Badr, of course, the strategic goal is, self-sufficiency.
Yes.
That's the ultimate goal.
Yes.
In food production, and also a surplus for exports. How do you see these two goals?
Yeah, I see these, of course, are very important. We work hard on this. We are already self-sufficient in some crops. But like vegetables and fruits. We export vegetables and we export fruits. But we cannot be self-sufficient in wheat production, for example, because if we cultivate our own land with wheat, it would be not sufficient for 100 million or 110 million of population.
Because it uses a lot of water?
A lot of water, and of course
there are other alternatives.
We consume bread as a major food in Egypt.
Yes, we do.
So if we cultivate most of our land with wheat, that will not be sufficient for our daily bread. But the logic is to cultivate some important crops for export, like vegetables, which are the price is good, and import.
Yes, but the wheat we import costs us a lot.
Yes, but
how do we make the balance?
Export and import of food is very common in the whole world. In some countries, wheat cultivation costs much less than we.
So you, as a scientist, you agree with that policy?
Yes, it has been our policy.
We should not really expand in a big way.
No, because wheat cultivation, it will come at the expense of other crops, which we also need. So we don't have grassland, for example, for animal production. So we cultivate clover. We can't cultivate all of our land wheat. We need also to cultivate clover for food, for animal food. So at least if we can cultivate some crops and some like vegetables and fruits, and we export this at high price, we can import food, wheat. This is not unusual in many countries. Some countries, the wheat production is very cheap, and we can import wheat much cheaper than the cost of our cultivation, because we irrigate, we use water, and we have limited water resources, because we all know our major resource is the River Nile, and our share in the River Nile is not open. So if we can cultivate other crops that consume much less water and export these fruits and the other medicinal plants, for example, and import the wheat, that is not a bad strategy. And we've been doing this for tens of years.
Yes, I do understand.
Yeah, we have.
But the reason I posed this question is because we saw how much Egypt, suffered during the Russia-Ukraine war.
Yes.
And importing wheat, costs it a lot of its foreign currency. And prices of bread got up, and prices naturally of other food commodities got up following this. So this is why I posed the question. But you still believe that despite the experience of the Russia-Ukraine situation, that this is still the right thing to do?
Yes, because if we cultivate our 7 or 8 million acres with wheat, that would not be enough for our consumption. So the logic...
That's amazing to hear. I mean, you say that...
Yes. We are 110 million population, and we eat bread every day.
Some experts in this area talked about that if a change in behavior, in appetite behavior happens
that's another,
to Egyptians, that will save us a lot of money. Is that correct? But how realistic is this?
Yeah, I agree with this view,
ambition.
but if we can control the consumption of the people, and of course we not only consume much wheat and bread, we may also use it for feeding animals, which is another misuse of wheat.
But what would be the substitute?
What would the substitute? All countries export and import food, and if we know that our population is increasing and our land is not increasing enough to cultivate food for our population, so it is normal to export some fruits and vegetables which are expensive.
Understood.
And import wheat. We've been importing wheat for tens of
I understand.
Of years.
But what if a change in behavior happens in eating?
Yes.
What will be the substitute for wheat?
The substitute for wheat is to consume less bread and less sweets.
And more what?
And more vegetables, and to eat more vegetables and fruits.
And that's healthier.
That's healthier, of course.
Healthy.
It will take time, because we all know that Egyptians eat bread in the breakfast and dinner and so on.
And lunch and
lunch.
Every
so if
meal,
we can consume less wheat, we can probably eat rice instead of bread. Many families do now replace wheat with rice. But again, we also import rice. We don't produce enough rice. We of course we cultivate rice, and the Egyptian rice is very tasty and very good. But again, it will be at the expense of cultivating some other thing. Our cultivation, agricultural land is limited, as we read the figures from the real situation, and we need first to control our population growth and regulate our consumption of wheat and the other major cereals, and of course export fruits and vegetables, and import wheat.
Okay. During the inauguration ceremony, the President said water represents a great challenge for Egypt, demanding advanced irrigation and agricultural mechanisms to save water.
That's very important. That's very important. And I think the Ministry of Agriculture has adopted some measures to reduce the consumption of water by plants, not to flooding irrigation, but to use dripping irrigation or spraying to consume much less water in agriculture. And there are some new approaches in water consumption, because we use as Egyptian to water by irrigation, by flooding. But now that's not possible. We can actually use other ways to give the plants the minimum water they require, and consume water for cultivating new lands.
I understand that this is the philosophy, this is the vision, the correct vision.
Yes, that's the correct vision. Yes.
Is it happening on the ground at a pace that we want?
Our objective is 4 million acres by 2030. 1.05 million last week or this week is good enough for harvesting. This is adding, actually, the new delta is adding about 25% of our agricultural land to the 6 millions we already have for tens of years. So if we actually follow this strategy of increasing agricultural land, that would be good. It will reduce the amount of import, and probably you can also make it more
the quality?
More suitable for our conditions, if we can cultivate some crops and vegetables and export it at higher price, and to import the wheat, because other countries like Ukraine and Russia and Argentina, the cultivation of wheat is very cheap. So importing wheat from these countries costs less than we cultivate in our land.
Okay.
And in our vegetables and the fruits are taste good, their quality is good, and we export at high price.
Okay. Dr. Badr, the President also mentioned during the ceremony the fact that Egypt has spent a lot of money, 190 billion Egyptian pounds, to build water treatment plants for agriculture. Also, your take on this, how important are these treatment plants in order to, again, save water?
Yeah, this is reuse of used water. And of course, we can. This costs a lot. That's why this figure of money is big. But we have 6 million faddans. We can actually increase the land by 2 additional millions by reusing the water. And so, for example, in the Nile Delta, we don't have River Nile there. We may have a canal, but we reuse the water that has been used already in irrigation.
But these treated water, as the President also mentioned, makes it effective only for some crops, not for all crops.
Yes, because you know, traditional crops like wheat and maize cannot withstand salinity, for example, or soil types. In the new land, the soil is not fertile enough for major crops, but it may be used for other vegetables and other fruit trees for some years. By time, the fertility of the soil will increase and will be more suitable for cultivating cereals and vegetables.
Okay. The President also mentioned the importance of the private sector adopting water conserving methods, including the center pivot irrigation and so on. So does that mean that the private sector is not?
Well, the President wouldn't say the private sector is not, but he's asking and inviting the private sector to contribute more to investment in agriculture. You know, agriculture is very important, and in the longer term, it will be profitable.
I mean, historically Egypt is an agricultural country.
Agricultural land. But if you invest in the desert, for example, you pay some money for preparing the soil and for providing the water supplies and canals. But after some years, then the productivity of the water will be more profitable than other choices of investment. So this is a new way for private investment to invest in longer term food production in Egypt. It will be profitable even for the businessmen.
Understood, but it seems the private sector is wasting some water here, we understand.
No, he's inviting them to use more less water in agriculture, because the private sector will not cultivate as much as the masses, but at least he can have the facilities to reuse the water more than once, because that is very important. And in general, investigating agriculture takes some time, but in the longer term, agricultural land price increases. So the investment in this in agriculture is a longer term successful investment. And in addition to investment and making profits, the land price itself will increase. So it will be added price if the price of the land in the desert is very cheap. But if it's cultivated for some years, its price will be about 10 times more. So this is the investment. The value of the money will be increased in terms of soil price and in terms of food production and crops.
So you as a scientist, you agree with the state's vision here that, as again stated by the President, that and we are quoting him, in the end, a drop of available water can produce the best, largest, and most valuable yield.
Yes.
Unquote. So again, the importance
yes.
of water. Water is a fortune.
Yes, yes, of course.
That's the key thing, is to preserve our water resources.
The water resource in Egypt is limited. And the Ministry of Agriculture has been planning for years, not only for this years, but for many years. They are planning to breed plants that consume less water and import cheaper food and import more expensive food, so they can actually compensate for importing our food. I agree totally with the agricultural strategy in the light of our condition, of our situation. We have a limited agricultural land because we have limited water. So we need to control everything, and they are doing the best just to import it and export to some other crops like fruits. It happens in many countries. Of course, in agricultural field we import more than other countries because our land is desert. We only cultivate about 5% of our
the area
land,
surrounding the Nile waters.
Yes, yes. It's good that we now talk about new delta. 1 million now, and in 2-3 years we'll have additional 1 million, and some other cultivated plants in Bani Suef and in Fayoum and even in Sinai, and the new valley. This will increase the cultivated agricultural land by 2 millions, in addition to we have already have. By 2030, we will increase to about good.
You commend the effort.
Yes.
The right direction, and at
of our condition, we are we have the Nile, but it's an arid country. Use rain irrigation because rain irrigation makes much difference. If you know, in Ukraine you don't have to water the plants, the rain falls enough, but in our we are
okay.
Egyptian farmers have very long history of agriculture, and we do in our best to produce as much as possible.
The agricultural sector contributes some 15% of GDP.
Yes.
Now, this should go up.
This can grow up, but it's all less, and we have only the variety
Okay. Our challenge is, Dr. That to continue
to continue the policy and probably for animal feeding or need some.
Okay. What about how
the question, because the global warming is, you know, there's two conferences on the global warming, and the global warming will actually agricultural production if we don't control the global warming. And warming is an international problem. It's not only Egypt, but our delta is expected to be less productive because of the saline water will increase in the river in the Mediterranean, and this may affect the soil production in the delta. But these we can find solutions. But at of course it will cost price. But
And
this
it will
is
take
very,
time
that
also.
will take, that's very important. We should actually start action from now, not to wait until the problem is severe and then try to find a solution. The climate change will affect the Nile Delta to some extent by increasing its salinity, and we can drain, we can reuse water, we can treat water to remove the salinity, to reduce the salinity, and you can breed new crops that can tolerate the drought and the salinity in the environment.
Okay. Back to this week's event, again, the Future of Egypt project. And this project has been described as not only an agricultural one, but it is agricultural, it is industrial, it is commercial. So can you talk to us about the attempts of integration at such a project, the significance of this project?
Agriculture, industry, instead of using fruits, for example, agricultural industry can produce jams and other means that it will increase the value of the agricultural production, and to export to food production, manufactured food abroad. That is very important because you actually increase the value of the agricultural production. And agriculture industry is very common, is very famous. The profits is very good. That's another actually important field of investment by private sector. If they actually go into, instead of exporting fruits, they can transform fruits into jams and others, and then
the added value.
They add value to their production, and this will bring foreign currency by exporting.
And what about depending on the local components when we manufacture the machines, for instance, that we use
this is very important to manufacture our machine and to breed our seeds and our plants locally. That's very locally. This is very important because this is very expensive. Breeding new crops is very expensive, and the breeders who actually have these new varieties of crops, they sell it as at high price because they invested money and they have the idea. The idea itself is important. We have breeding institutions which are actually making the new varieties every now and then. But we will continue breeding new crops. That's important. Drought tolerant crops, salinity tolerant crops, crops that uses less water, that uses less fertilizers, that does not insecticide tolerant or insecticide tolerance. So we can use insecticide. It's another. How does it help in, bridging or linking all of the bigger areas now of Egypt that we live in together? This is when we expand the agriculture, we don't only expand into the new delta, west of the old delta, but we expand east and west from the Nile when it's possible, like in Minya, like Bani Suef, for example, where you can expand north and east and west from the Nile. Yes, and in Dakhla, in the oasis, we can actually expand not only the cultivated area, but also by introducing crops that is more productive, that's more tolerant to drought, so we can cultivate.
The Badr is widely considered Cairo.